I will start the meeting in just a second.
Morning, Scott.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting of December 8th, 2020. I'd like to call the members to order. This meeting, as we know, is being held remotely through Zoom. Even though our meetings are now being held remotely, I'd like to acknowledge that Ottawa is on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. It is impossible to acknowledge our built heritage without acknowledging the Algonquin people as the customary keepers and defenders of this land. For those of you who do not need to participate in the meeting, you can also watch these proceedings live on the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel. A reminder to participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call upon you to speak. I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item in the order in which they raised their hand in Zoom. For panelists, the raise hand option is found at the bottom of the participants list. For attendees, you will find the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. For those calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. The usual 5-minute speaking limit will apply. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest opportunity. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak and to provide written submissions to this subcommittee, residents may still provide written submissions to council. If you have technical difficulties signing into the meeting, you can contact the committee coordinator by calling 613-580-2424, extension 22953. A reminder that if participants are having technical issues with their Zoom connection, they may call in using the backup telephone number provided by the coordinator. In terms of regrets, I have received regrets from Councillor McKinney. Could the committee coordinator please call the roll? A reminder to members to unmute themselves when they are called.
Member Halsell.
Present.
Member Podolsky.
Present.
Councillor McKinney. Member Conforti.
Present.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Vice Chair Quinn.
I'm here.
Chair King.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. The next item is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, confirmation of minutes. Are the minutes for the meeting of November 13th, 2020 confirmed?
Carried.
Confirmed. Our first item is in regards to planning, infrastructure, and economic development, right-of-way, heritage, and urban design services. Number one, an application to alter 540 Manor Avenue, a property located within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District and designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
Good morning, everyone. The first application before you is an application to alter 540 Manor Avenue, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. The property is located on Manor Avenue between Thorold Road and Hillcrest Road. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. The property is situated to the northwest part of the district on a large lot. Next slide. The property features a semicircular driveway, pine trees along the front property line, and an English cottage style house. This property is a Grade 1 property within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. Next slide. The house was built circa 1925 and designed by Alan W. Horwood. It features a steeply pitched roof, painted brick and stucco cladding, multi-pane casement windows, and 2 tall chimneys. Over the years, numerous changes and additions have been made to the building, including the frontispiece, a new garage, and the garage link. Next slide. As well, additions have been made to the side and rear of the house. Next slide. The application today includes the removal of all additions and the construction of one new addition to the rear of the house. Here is the site plan. On the left, the image shows what is there today. On the right is what is proposed. The original form of the house is colored in dark gray, and the yellow areas are the additions, including the garages. The left image, the yellow areas will be removed, and on the right is the addition that is proposed. Note that there will be a detached garage, single car garage next to the house, and a veranda, colored in beige, that wraps around the back and sides of the house. Next slide. These elevations on the front and side of the house show the areas that will be removed as part of this application. These include the frontispiece, the garages and their link to the house, as well as the side and rear additions. Next slide. Here's the proposed front and rear elevations. The new addition will be to the rear and take design cues from the house in terms of massing and materials. The addition will feature a steeply pitched roof with a height that will be lower than the existing house. It will be clad in stucco and have multi-paned windows. The new addition will include living space, a wraparound porch at the rear and sides, as well as a below-grade 3-car garage. A single-car detached garage is also proposed. Next slide. Here are the 2 side elevations. The addition has been highlighted by a red box. The placement of the addition allows for the existing house to read in its original form. The steeply pitched roof can still be read on all 4 sides, and a setback from the original house form. Next slide, please. Here are the renderings of the front of the house. With the additions and garages removed, the house in its original form retains primacy on the lot and maintains the main focus. Other elements of this proposal include the removal and replacement of the front canopy, the replacement of the windows, as well as the reshingling of the roof with a new metal shingle. As part of the overall cleanup of the building, the applicant has agreed to explore opportunities to remove the paint from the brick. A test patch will be done in a discrete location to determine if this is feasible. Next slide. Here are the views of the rear of the building showing the addition and the veranda. Next slide. The proposed landscape plan includes the retention of the semicircular driveway, the creation of a new reverse slope driveway, as well as a pool and accompanying pool house in the rear yard. Since the addition will be generally in line with the existing house, the side yard setbacks will be maintained and in some areas increased. The front yard will have a reduction in hard surfacing since the existing 2-car width driveway leading to the 2 single-car garages will be narrowed to accommodate a single-car garage. No mature trees will be removed for this application. Only 1 tree is proposed to be removed due to poor health and is circled in red on the plan. The front cedar hedge will be replaced with new cedars, and a new cedar hedge will be planted along the side property lines as indicated by the green contouring. Next slide. As a property located within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District, this application is required to meet the guidelines in the plan. The applicable guidelines relate to altering grade 1 properties. Additions should be of their own time, lower than the original structure, clad in a compatible material, subordinate to and distinguishable from the house. Standards 1 and 11 of the Standards and Guidelines of the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada are both applicable in this application. The heritage value of the house and district will be maintained, and the new work will be physically and visually compatible with, as well as subordinate to and distinguishable from the original house. The roofline of the addition is lower than the existing building, is set back from the front facade, clad in materials that reflect the character of the original house and are typical of the area. Although somewhat similar in expression, the addition is distinguishable from the original house since it is stepped back from the front, has a lower roof, and is set on both sides, providing a visual break between old and new. The house will remain compatible with the heritage attributes of the HCD in terms of its form, massing, overall height, setback, and dominance of the property's landscape setting. The proposal will also rehabilitate an existing house that requires repairs. A cultural heritage impact statement was also completed for this application. The report found that the addition respects the orientation, site setback, and height requirements outlined in the HCD plan, as it retains a relationship to adjacent buildings, respecting the cultural heritage value of the streetscape. Next slide. As far as consultation goes, the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association Heritage Committee was involved in the pre-consultation pilot. They have been supportive of this application, and their comments can be found in the report. Heritage Ottawa was notified of this application. They have submitted comments, I believe, just yesterday and are supportive. The ward councillor is aware of the application, and neighbors within 30 meters were also notified. Next slide. In conclusion, staff recommend to approve the application to alter the building, the landscape plan, and to issue a permit with a 2-year expiry date. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for that report. As you had mentioned, we did receive correspondence from David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa in a letter that was dated December 7th in support of the report recommendations. As well, we do have a speaker available in support of the project, Dylan O'Keefe of O'Keefe Forensic Design Group. I'd like to invite Mr. O'Keefe to speak if there is any need. However, I know that he is primarily here to answer questions from the subcommittee. So I didn't know if Mr. O'Keefe was online and had a formal presentation or was just here really to entertain questions from the committee.
Hi, good morning. I'm here mainly just to answer questions if anybody has anything in relation to the report.
Thank you. And I do not see anybody with raised hands for questions of Mr. O'Keefe. So does the committee have any questions for staff on this item? And apologies, my screen has actually gone blank. So just please bear with me here.
I see one hand raised from member Halsall, Chair.
Okay, please go ahead with that. I'm just trying to recover my screen here.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the brick testing. Is that mainly being conducted for documentary purposes, or are they actually planning to restore the brick to its initial color? Or, you know, I just noticed that the design for the addition seems to be predicated on the assumption that the white paint will be staying, which is fine. I was curious.
Yeah. Dylan, you can jump in if you'd like to, but as far as I understand it, the applicant is going to explore removing the paint. From discussions with their heritage consultant, John Stewart, we believe that the type of brick may not lend itself to removing the paint very well, but they still have agreed to explore that option.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I have to apologize. I am having some technical difficulties with my computer. So I am going to have to make some alternative arrangements. I don't know if it is possible for the committee coordinator to just proceed with just a short recess until I can rejoin and get my screen back. So I do apologize. Apologies, everybody. I don't know if I'm back. Sorry, apologies, everybody. This is one of the problems I have with going back and forth with different platforms. When I do that, unfortunately, for some reason, my screen goes blank, and it causes for the utmost an embarrassment here. But I'm very pleased that the computer has resumed. I do know that that member Conforti had last asked a question. That was the last item that I had heard, I believe, of the architect, I believe.
Yeah, and it was actually Member Halsall that had a question.
Oh, sorry, sorry,
believe,
yeah, because it did cut out before.
Yeah,
sorry.
No problem. And I believe it was answered, but I'll let Jen speak to that.
Yep, it was answered wonderfully.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. O'Keefe? If not, does the committee have any questions for staff? Seeing none, do any of the members have any comments on this item generally? Member Podolsky.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Only brief comments of positive support for the proposal. And also, I think that the presentation itself by the designer architects and in collaboration with city staff shows clearly what is being removed, what is being proposed. So I think that this meets the standard of communication that I think we all are constantly looking for. So compliments to the team for doing that. And also my only comment is that I endorse the proposal and the approach. I think it's a sensitive intervention and it's respectful to standards and guidelines for historic places in Canada. And just wanted to give my positive comments on that. Thank you very much. And I'll support the motion.
Thank you so much. I think that I share actually all the sentiments that you actually outlined, Member Podolsky, on this file. I think that it also has been very thorough. And so I am also in support of this report. Is the report carried?
Carried.
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 Thank you. The report is scheduled to be presented to Council on January 27th. Our next item is an application to demolish and rebuild rear detached garage at 114 Stanley Avenue, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, located on River Lane. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Built Heritage Subcommittee. For anybody who has not met me, my name is Greg McPherson. I'm a junior heritage planner here with the City of Ottawa. So today I will be presenting on proposed alterations to 114 Stanley Avenue, a property located in the New Edinburgh Heritage Conservation District and designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. So the property is located on Stanley Avenue within the New Edinburgh HCD between Union Street and Queen Victoria Street. It is identified as a contributing building within the HCD, and it can also be accessed from River Lane, a public laneway to the north of the property. Next slide, please. So from Stanley Avenue, this is what the property currently looks like. It features a relatively simple front gable design, along with decorative barge board along the roofline. The property was constructed circa 1872 by Henry Avery, who is a notable local contractor within New Edinburgh. And next slide, please. So the subject application relates not to the main dwelling on the property, but the detached garage, which fronts onto River Lane at the rear of the property. So this garage is believed to have been built at approximately the same time as the main dwelling on the property. And you can see in this photo here, the existing garage. It features a side gable design and it's clad with board and batten siding. As you can see, the condition of the garage is relatively deteriorated. Some of the siding has begun to warp and the roof has begun to buckle a little bit. And just to note as well, you can't really see it here, but the garage does not have a foundation. It sits directly on just a wood foundation, which sort of floats on top of the ground. And next slide, please. So this photo further showcases the existing condition of the detached garage. Again, you can see the warping of the board and batten siding and the sloping of the roof. So the intent of this project is to demolish the existing garage and reconstruct a new detached garage with nearly the exact same form, scale, and materials as what exists currently. As part of this project, a concrete foundation will also be poured for the garage to sit on. And materials from the existing garage will be salvaged and reused where possible. It's believed that approximately 30% of the board and batten siding could be salvaged and reapplied to the new garage, along with approximately 70% of the wood studs and some of the windows and doors. The historic siding will be reapplied primarily to the exterior facades facing River Lane, where possible, and any new siding will be stained to match. The decision to demolish and reconstruct the garage was made after a structural inspection was undertaken. This report found that due to a lack of foundation and successive freeze-thaw cycles over the courses of many years, the garage was no longer structurally stable. So the report therefore recommended the demolition of the garage and the salvage and reuse of materials where possible. Next slide, please. So this image shows the site plan of the property. Highlighted in red there is the approximate form of the proposed garage. And next slide, please. So this just is a zoomed in picture of that proposed garage, and then onto the next slide, please. So highlighted in red here is kind of the approximate outline of the existing garage. And then next slide, please. And then tacked on in green here is sort of the proposed extension. So this proposed bit, it's a bay entrance, and it will be facing the existing dwelling and not visible from River Lane. So just because of this increased size, 3 variances are required, primarily in relation to the heritage overlay, just to permit a slight addition in the volume and floor area of the property. So the variance process will be undertaken following the heritage permit process. And next slide, please. So this elevation shows the proposed elevation from River Lane. So as you can see, the most notable difference between the existing garage and the proposed garage is the new carriage style garage door. That's approximately twice the width of the existing garage door. And again, the board and batten here will be a mix of salvaged board and batten siding as well as new board and batten siding that is stained to match. Slide 11, please. So this slide shows the elevation actually facing the house towards Stanley Street. So you can see in the sort of middle there is the projecting entrance that's proposed, as well as a dormer above that. So the windows and doors here will be salvaged from the existing garage if possible. And this dormer and this bump out are not visible from River Lane just due to the width of the lot and the width of the garage. Next slide, please. And then again, you can just see some of the elevations here. These are from this. These windows will also be salvaged if possible. Next slide. Next slide, please. And here are some renderings which have superimposed the proposed garage within images of the existing River Lane. So as you can see, the form of the garage is relatively identical to what is existing. The most notable difference, again, being that double garage door. And next slide. And here is just a view of the proposed rear of the garage. So this would be if you were standing on within the backyard of the property. This is what you would see here. All right, and next slide. So applicable guidelines and policies. So as this property is located within the New Edinburgh HCD, it is required to, or any alterations are required to conform to the policies of the New Edinburgh HCD plan. So the specific guidelines that relates to here are the guidelines for garages and accessory buildings, as well as the guidelines for laneways. So the garage reflects these design requirements by incorporating a gable design and using wood cladding, which is sensitive to the surrounding HCD. Similarly, the laneway guidelines require that new accessory buildings be simple in character and reflect the character of other garages. There are not specific policies within the HCD plan for the demolition of accessory buildings, but salvage and reuse is considered a good practice when in relation to any demolition related to contributing buildings. So we are supportive of the reuse of some of the materials here. As well, standards 1, 10, and 11 of for the ordinances in Canada, all speaking certain character while and reusing some of the existing materials. So overall, the proposed garage is complementary to the character of the existing HCD and is supportive of the New Edinburgh HCD plan guidelines. Next slide, please. Consultation, so there was some early consultation with Heritage staff as well as the Community Association. We have to receive support from the New Edinburgh Community Alliance. Heritage Ottawa was also notified of the application, and I believe last night or this morning we also received support from them. The ward councillor has been notified of the application as well as neighbors within 30 meters of the property. And next slide, please. So we recommend that the application be approved, conditional upon the applicant salvaging any historic materials, including wood cladding, windows, doors, and structural beams prior to demolition and reusing them wherever possible, as well as delegating authority for minor design changes to the general manager and issuing the heritage permit with a 2-year expiry date. That is my report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. That was very detailed. We did receive correspondence on this file from David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa in a letter that was dated December 7th. That was in support of the report recommendations. We also received a letter from an adjacent neighbor, James Trottier, dated December 7th, which was opposing the application, I think, due to navigation issues around the lane and size of the building. We do have 2 speakers who are registered, Mario Poulin of Cloud9 Drafting and Design, who is an agent for the owner. I will invite Mr. Poulin to speak if he has a presentation. If not, obviously, he can be made available to the subcommittee for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I wanted to just quickly demonstrate something from Mr. McPherson's slide. So as the blown up portion of what the garage is presently, I wanted to just indicate that there is an existing bump out facing the house. And the reason for the bigger bump out is that unfortunately the car lengths are greater than what I think it used to be. So the previous owner had a little Fiat and had about 1.5 feet to walk behind the car. And the bump out was made so that the front portion of the bump out was only the height of the hood so that she could fit the hood. So you couldn't back a car up into the garage. In our situation, the reason for the bump out being bigger is so that 1, we can potentially park 2 vehicles, and 2, be able to back up the vehicle in order to accommodate exactly the tightness of River Lane. So I know that River Lane, with the utility pole there and the width of the street, limits a little bit of what the turning radius is. For that reason, we've adjusted a few things accordingly, or as best as we could in the proposal, So the property itself, the garage now, is about a foot over onto the neighboring property. We brought that back onto our side to limit the width and help with that first corner. And then the reason for the wider door is exactly that, to be able to maximize the radius as best as possible. So I think that's it for now, unless there's other questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And are there any questions from the subcommittee for this delegate? I am not seeing any raised hands, so thank you so much, Mr. Poulin. And the next person on the list is the owner, Jennifer Toby.
Hi. Hi. I don't know if you can see me or not.
We can.
Oh, there we are. Okay. There, now we can. Okay. So thank you for meeting and thank you for the presentation. I just did want to point out that that the way that the current situation is I just moved in September and I have no parking at all, period, none, because the street has no parking and the back lane, the current garage is unusable, it's unsafe, and it's not usable at all. So this is not it's a nice to have, it's actually kind of an essential piece of the property for me. And I don't know if you're familiar with the house, but the work that we've done here has been extremely sensitive to the heritage community. We're very heritage focused. You can see that the wood behind me is the original 150-year-old wood that we maintained, and it looks like the church. So we are we're very appreciative of the heritage committee and the substandards, but it has to function. So that's all I'd like to add to the conversation. So thank you for your consideration.
And was there any questions for Ms. Toby? And seeing none, does the committee have any questions for staff? I don't see any hands raised. I just want to make sure that my computer is working, because I do see some frozen people on my screen. If there are no questions for staff, do any of the members have any comments generally on this item? And I do see Vice Chair Quinn's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment is only to congratulate the owner on the effort to restore in a reconstruction format an important aspect to the back lanes that are inside the Heritage Conservation District of New Edinburgh, an important feature of that district. And I also thank Mr. Poulin for adding that extra bit of information about how they have worked on the design to address some of the concerns that their neighbor, Mr. Trottier, had in terms of radius and the need for the owner to perhaps use his driveway. So being able to back into the garage, I think, is going to really help address those concerns. Not that they are concerns for our committee per se, but nonetheless, impact on the community is important. And also to congratulate the owners on the beautiful interior that we can see in her house. So just to say that I will be indeed supporting this application.
Thank you, Vice Chair Quinn. I also concurred with all of those comments, including the fact that obviously the concern of the adjacent neighbor, in my mind, was valid and obviously very serious, but unfortunately is not the purview of this committee. But my hope, of course, being a very neighborly, wonderful community, that neighbors will talk with one another and will make accommodations for one another. So I will also be in favor of this report. Is this report carried?
Carried. Yes.
Carried.
Carried. This report is scheduled to be presented to Council on January 27th. And our next matter is an update. Sorry. Okay. Our next item is an update concerning the Ontario Heritage Act, proposed regulations pursuant to Bill 108. Before we proceed with receiving an oral update on this matter, I'd like to ask for a motion to suspend the rules so that staff are not required to provide a written report. I'll ask Vice Chair Quinn to read the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion reads as follows. Be it resolved that the Built Heritage Subcommittee suspend the rules of procedure to receive an oral update from staff with respect to the proposed regulations pursuant to Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choice Act 2019, and to dispense with the requirement for staff to provide any further written report on this update so that the committee may receive timely information on this matter.
Thank you, Vice Chair Quinn. Is the motion carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. Can staff please provide their update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just wait for the committee coordinator to put I have just a couple of slides for you this morning. Thank you. So as it's said in the agenda, this will just be a very brief update on Bill 108 and the changes to the Ontario Heritage Act, which you've been hearing about from us for the last several months. Next slide, please. So as you may remember, Built Heritage Subcommittee and Council endorsed a letter from the Mayor, including staff comments on the proposed regulations under the Ontario Heritage Act. This was sent to the Ministry at the beginning of November. We have not had a response to that letter to date. The only additional information we have at this point is that the Ministry confirmed to us by email near the end of November that they are continuing to target January 1st, 2021 as the date for the legislative changes to come into full force and effect. As a result of this, we've been working on a work plan to ensure that we are as prepared as possible to deal with these changes. As you may remember from the October report, we are anticipating quite a heavy workload resulting from the changes to the Act. So we're trying to position ourselves as best we can given the short timeline. And the Ministry has also informed us that they intend to release the revised Ontario Heritage Toolkit in draft form at some point this month. That again was at some point in November, they advised us of that. We have not received it yet, and we will advise the committee when the draft is circulated for comment. I expect the committee would be circulated as well. But this is an important supporting document that we will need to consider when it's released. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So as part of our work planning for the implementation of the legislative changes coming from Bill 108, we've triaged the various processes that need to be put in place to ensure that we are compliant with the updated legislation. So this slide shows a high-level version of some of the items that will be undertaken both internally at the staff level, but also several of these items will come forward to the subcommittee in the next few months. So the high priority items to be undertaken early in the new year include developing an internal tracking system to respond to the prescribed timelines in the new legislation. This is related to designations as well as applications to alter. And then also we have to figure out a way to track all planning applications related to official plan, zoning bylaw amendments, and subdivision applications to ensure that the heritage interests are protected. We are currently working on developing this internal system and aiming to have it in place by January 1st. The second piece is training on the new legislative changes and the Ontario Heritage Toolkit for both staff and members of the Built Heritage Subcommittee as desired. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we're anticipating the draft toolkit soon. And the Ministry has also informally advised that they will be offering training on the legislative changes in terms of interpretation and what is intended by those changes early in the new year. So we will again keep the committee updated as to how that progresses, and any interested members of the committee who'd like to receive that training, we'd be happy to coordinate that with the Ministry. And then the final piece, which is the biggest piece, is to finish updating our pre-2005 HCDs to meet the updated requirements of the Act. This is a high priority item. It will not be done overnight, but we are aiming to have a work plan in place early in the new year to address these issues. And we expect that to come forward to the committee for review. There are 7 outstanding HCD plans to update that are pre-2005. In the medium category, we have to develop some new report templates for both reports that come forward to the Built Heritage Subcommittee and for application summaries related to permits issued under delegated authority. And this is to address a variety of changes in the Act, but primarily we need to include an assessment of whether or not applications meet what are called the prescribed principles that have been outlined in the regulation. And that requirement basically says that in making any decisions under the Heritage Act, council or its delegate, being staff, have to consider these prescribed principles in making that and making their decisions. So we have to include something in our report template that illustrates how we've addressed those prescribed principles. Also a large piece under the medium category that will be coming before the committee in the new year are updates to our Heritage Register procedures. So this is related to listing, removing, demolition, as well as a new objection procedure because properties that are added to the register going forward in 2021, owners will have ability to object, formally object to the listing, and then have that objection considered by committee and council. And then along with that, we are developing some standardized evaluation criteria for future listings on the Heritage Register. So that's a big piece of work that will be coming forward to the committee. We're hoping in Q1 of 2021. The next pieces are sort of developing new designation bylaw content and templates is going to go along with the report template updates. That's more of an internal document to reflect the requirements of the legislative changes. And then finally is developing a new process to deal with the removal of heritage attributes. So anytime that a heritage attribute is removed in the future, committee and council will be required to basically reconsider whether or not the property continues to have cultural heritage value. So we're still working to figure out how this will work in terms of delegated authority versus properties that come forward to committee and what exactly constitutes removal of a heritage attribute. So if, for instance, somebody is changing windows and they're replacing them with something slightly different, but the windows are listed as a heritage attribute, does that mean that City Council has to then reconsider the designation entirely and basically reaffirm that they believe the property has cultural heritage value? So I expect that'll be something that will be coming before the committee in the new year as well. And then finally, in the sort of low priority category, but items that do have to be undertaken, is new procedures for processing appeals to the Land Use Planning Appeals Tribunal, as the Conservation Review Board will no longer be functioning as of January, and all appeals under the Heritage Act will now go to LPAT. And then some additional timeline tracking for things like the repeal of designation bylaws. So again, these are low priority items at the moment. And as I mentioned, this is a very high level look of what we have to do. There are a lot of other little bits and pieces that I think will come across as things move along. So this is what we think we have to do right now, but I expect that we may uncover some other items. Next slide, please. And this is just the last slide, just to give you a sense of timing. So the items that we've put in the high priority category, we're hoping to have a system in place to deal with them by the end of January. The medium would be by the end of Q1 2021 or earlier if something comes up that we have to deal with. And then the low category would be in place by the end of next year or earlier if the need arises. So that's all I had for today. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. There are still some unknowns about all of this.
Thank you, Lily, for that update. Does the committee have any questions for staff on this item? And I do see that member Podolsky has his hand up, his virtual hand up.
A very quick question, and that is that we appreciate how much Bill 108 changes to the Heritage Act is going to affect the city's procedures and the framework for dealing with applications and designations, as well as additional readjustment of the mindsets of the Built Heritage Subcommittee. So I think that as soon as things like the toolkit and other information come forward, if you could circulate them to the Built Heritage Subcommittee members as soon as possible, that would be great. And although this is just a verbal update you've given, the slides that you have used, I find are quite helpful cues. So maybe after the meeting, if they could just be informally circulated to the members of the Built Heritage Subcommittee, because they're a little checklist of your priorities, and that would be helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee to staff? If not, do any of the members have any comments on this item generally? Seeing no raised hands, is the update received? Received. Yeah, thank you. As we move along in the agenda, no in-camera items were received. There are no in-camera items for this meeting. There were no notices of motion received to date. For inquiries, there were none to date. Under other business, the following planning circulations have been listed under other business. That includes a circulation for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 267 O'Connor Street, a zoning bylaw amendment for Gladstone Station District Secondary Plan Area, as well as an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 70 Richmond Road. There are these three planning circulations on the agenda, which were distributed to members prior to the meeting. Members of the public had the opportunity to comment through DevApps on ottawa.ca. The subcommittee will be considering applications under the Ontario Heritage Act in relation to 267 O'Connor Street and 70 Richmond Road at a future date. Is there any other business? Seeing none, adjournment. On adjournment, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Carried.
We are adjourned, and thank you everyone, and especially for putting up with some of the technical difficulties that I unfortunately experienced. But I think that unfortunately comes with the new world of virtual meetings and Zoom. The next regular meeting for the subcommittee is scheduled for Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays if I don't see you in the interim. And I look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Take care.